It's fishing time, folks, and this week we're at the lovely Green Farm Fishery, not too far from Towcester in Northamptonshire. It's their annual Fjuka match, 11 souls battling it out for the prestigious Fjuka trophy. Now this match was the brainchild of the lad on the peg behind me, Dean Jones, who invented it just after lockdown last year. It was won last year by Mick Large, who's drawn peg 1 today, so he'll certainly be dangerous. But to be honest, with the wind pushing down this way, my money is on Dean Jones. Now the rules of this competition are very, very simple. Anglers have got to fish Fjuka on the hook, but they can feed whatever they like and any method is allowed. So it's going to be a really, really interesting battle. As you can see, the wind and weather conditions are against us. We're getting away with it at the minute, but they forecast heavy rain for later. So it's not going to be one for the faint-hearted. Let's get around the lake now though and see how the lads are getting on. Come on. So on the peg behind me, we've got last year's winner, Mick Large. He has got a very simple plan today. He's fishing the long pole, he's feeding fishery micro pellets, and he's fishing one of our natural fat boys on the hook with the hope of selecting some of the bigger carp that live in this area of the lake. He says it's quite deep where he's fishing. That wind pushing in his face, I think that's going to make things quite uncomfortable for him. I've already seen a couple of fish being caught at the other end of the lake, where I think it's a bit shallower, the wind's moving up there, and I know Dean Jones has had a couple of good fish and a decent start, so we'll probably head up there and see how he's getting on, and hopefully come back when Mick sorts out some of them big fish a little bit later. Come on. So, Dean's on the peg behind me just there. This is his third fish of the day. Not the biggest fish he's had, looks like a little roach, the others have been carp. But I've just noticed Nigel and Dave on the pegs either side of him are catching a few fish on the feeder as well. Now what Dean's been doing is putting in some micros. I actually just nicked some out of his bait box. Micros mixed up with ground up Fjuka to make like a multicoloured feed, and then fishing pieces of 2-in-1 over the top. I think he's probably in the lead at the minute with the fish he's had so far, and he's probably got 8 or 9 pound, but obviously we're only about half an hour in. So there's fish starting to show all the way around the lake. It's going to be really interesting to see how this pans out. So while we're here at Green Farm, it'd be rude not to have a little fish myself. So I've come on the lake above where the match is taking place just for an hour to see what we can catch. I wanted to try a new product that I'm really excited about. It's coming out next month, and that's the natural micros, which I think are a perfect match for fishery micro feed pellets. I wanted to give them a little go, and I'm pleased to say this is my first fish on them, so we'll see what it is. I'm hoping it's a little carp. Feels like one. Oh yeah, look at that. Little pasty. Now fish like this are suckers for micros, as we know, as RF1s of course. Look at him. Gorgeous little fish. Absolutely scale perfect he is. Let's get the hook out of him. Look at that. What an absolute beauty. The fish at Green Farm are all in decent nick, to be fair. I mean, I've not seen a damaged mouth yet, which is testament to how well Dean and the team look after it. We'll slip him back. And while I'm here, it would make sense, I suppose, to fill you in on the expectations for the weekend's weather. Let me get back in actually before I do that. I'm going to put another micro on, get out and have a fish, and hopefully we can do that while I'm fishing. So I'll just show you how easily these go on the hook. As with all my Fjuka, I like to keep them in the packet so it doesn't dry out. Not that there's much chance of that today with the scattered showers and wind and everything. I don't know whether you can see that, but I've just literally rolled that onto the hook. It looks absolutely just like the Coppins Fishery feed pellets that I'm putting in. So I'm just going to put, I don't know, about 50 or 60 micros in. Quite deep water here, there's quite a lot of other fish about. I've seen a few roach, so I don't mind being fairly positive early on. And we'll just see what we can catch. So what's the weekend going to hold weather-wise? Well, I'm afraid it's bad news. I've given you good news the last few weeks I've done this show, and this week's the first time I'm going to have to say it's looking quite naughty for sitting out and fishing. It's rainy on Saturday, quite breezy too. We're looking at sort of 20 to 30 mile an hour winds in the north of England, a little bit less in the Midlands, but not that much. It's saying sort of 18 to 20 around there, and similar in the south. Temperatures 12, 13 degrees it's looking like, which although not disastrously cold for the time of year, it's a big drop since last week. So again, perhaps not the most comfortable weekend to be out fishing, but the good thing is, obviously we've had this drop since earlier in the week, probably Monday or Tuesday when it plummeted down from the heights of last weekend. So it's not like the fish won't be used to it. I still think there'll be some fish to be caught if you're getting out this weekend. Tactics wise, I'd start to look at toning things down on the commercial fisheries. I'd be looking to probably feed a little bit less, maybe start bringing some micros into play as opposed to the standard 5 mils. Don't go too mad in terms of negativity though, because, you know, as I said, we're not in winter mode yet. It's still reasonably mild. I still think maybe a toned down approach with 5 mil pellets would be a good place to start. That was a nice bite. And then obviously you can up the ante or down the ante, if that's even a phrase, as your session goes on and you work out what's happening. I don't think there's any need to, you know, be too negative. Just feel your way into the session. As Tommy Pickering always says, you can put it in, you can't take it out when it comes to the feed. And I think that's a really, really important motto at this time of year. You look at my setup today, we've got pink hydro on. All right, I have fed quite a few pellets, but the micro pellets I fed, you know, 40 or 50 as I said when I kicked the swim off. And that's more just to push the fish down to the bottom and get them in the area really. So if you're on the commercial, don't go too gung-ho. I'd look to start fairly long, whether that be long pole in the deeper water, or if you're fishing a feeder, cast towards the middle of the lake. That always works well. When it comes to rivers, we've had a little bit of extra water this week, so it's going to depend really on where that rain's fell in your area and what your river level is doing. Can't recommend highly enough the Environment Agency's river level service. Have a look on there, that'll tell you exactly what water is in your local river. But if you've got a touch on, the key I always think this time of year is if it's the water's come up and it's dropping, that's always a great time to go fishing. So if there's fresh water coming into it, it's often cooler, so it can be a little bit harder. But if obviously that water's been in for a day or two and there's extra water and the river's dropping, that's a great time to go river fishing. So just bear that in mind. If you've got a dropping river, you might want to get out and have a go. Canal wise, I think you'll have a great time on the canals this weekend. That extra water will have done them no harm whatsoever. And the fact that it's raining Saturday and Sunday, that's going to put a few boaters off. So you should have a nice weekend on the canals. Many of the Angling Trust Winter Leagues get underway this weekend. I know ours does. I'll be at Holcroft Fishery this weekend. So just check, make sure there's no matches on your favourite stretch if you're going pleasure fishing. But if you're going match fishing, of course, the weather won't bother you. We have to go all weathers. And I actually think, given the conditions, we'll have quite a nice time. This is a lovely little common, so we'll get this in and then we'll head back down to the lake and see what's happening. You can see I'm taking my time with this, and that's because I've scaled down. I'm on, I think it's an 0.11 hook length, which might sound fine, but it's important as that water temperature starts to drop and the water goes clearer, scaling down will definitely get you more bites. And as long as you've got balanced tackle and take your time, you can always land what you hook anyway. Oh, I don't want to rush him. A lovely little fish. There we are. Just a gorgeous little Green Farm common carp. Look at him. Absolutely beautiful. Have a great time on the bank this weekend, folks. Tight lines, and we'll head back down to the lake and see what's being caught. So one man who's got off to a great start is Dave on the peg behind me. He's catching really well on the method feeder, and with today being quite windy, I think it's a key tactic for many looking around the lake. But what he's doing is quite innovative and quite different. He's not just fishing a standard method feeder as a lot of people would with, say, fishery micros on it and a neons on the hook. What he's doing is mixing ground Fjuka, so that's Fjuka that's 2-in-1 that's dried out a little bit and been ground down in a grinding machine, he's adding that to his ground bait, mixing it in to make almost a Fjuka ground bait mix. And he's fishing 2 pieces of red 2-in-1 in the shape of maggots on the hook, burying that in the feeder and casting out, and he's catching some absolutely cracking fish. I think this is about carp number 16 or 17 for him, so really, really strong start. Plenty of other fish being caught around the lake on the feeder. It'll be interesting to see whether the pole boys come good late on, because obviously on lakes like this you can often catch a little bit quicker on the pole, so it'll be interesting as we move into the later stages of the match to see whether the feeder anglers like Dave can maintain their lead. I'm going to go around and see how the pole anglers are getting on now. Well, it hasn't taken us long to find some pole fishing action. Phil on the peg behind me is catching really, really well on the long pole. I've just popped down to him to find out what he's doing, and he's actually fishing a banded fat boy or piece of 5mm natural Fjuka on the hook. He's feeding a combination of ground bait micros, Fjuka micros and 5mm Fjuka mixed into what I like to call a party mix, just a bit of everything together through a pole mounted pot, and he keeps introducing that every put in to keep fish coming. Now interestingly, he's only recently switched to the banded bait. Early on in the day he caught on a very innovative method, which was basically getting normal 2-in-1 out of the packet, squeezing it and then rolling it in dry ground bait to give it extra attraction. So we've got about 40 minutes left of the match at the moment, and we're up the top end of the lake now. Been stood here for about half an hour and it seems like it's fishing a little bit tougher up this end. 20s generally are fishing harder. We've seen just a couple of fish hooked. Chap you can see behind me now, he's playing one, but other than that really it's been quite steady, which is strange because last week when the wind was up here, this was the end you wanted to be on. Looking at the results, you can never really tell where it's going to be won at Green Farm. But what that does mean is I think it's going to be a great battle to the death between Dave and Phil. Dave of course on the method feeder, Phil on the pole, to see who lifts the title of this year's Fjuka Cup champion. Sadly, one man I don't think will be troubling the leaderboard is last year's champion Mick Large behind me. He had a decent run mid-match, but he struggled to put anything together for the early part or the late part of the match, he tells me, so he's admitting to about £20 at the minute. That said, the angler next to him, young Tom, we've seen him catching fairly steadily while we've been around the far end of the lake, and although we don't think he's challenging our leaders, we're just going to finish up by going to see him and see what he's caught, because he could well be springing a surprise. Well, we were right. Tom is catching quite well. He's also admitting to 20 odd carp, so I think this could be a little bit closer than we first thought. Now, Tom's fishing the method feeder. He's just putting normal fishery micros around the feeder, and he's fishing a Fjuka pink neons on the hook on a band, a single piece of Fjuka neons. So a dead simple attack, one that I've caught a lot of fishing on commercial fisheries myself. It's interesting, I've seen a real range of tactics. People incorporating Fjuka into the feed and some people just using it as a standout hook bait. So it'll be interesting to see who's come out on top today. The weigh-in will be in about 5 minutes. I think it's going to be really, really close.
Got me. 27.1? 26. 26.15.
I'll give you £1 if you've got £26 there. Yeah.
£40.
Yeah, it's got to be in there. Yeah. £30.
37. 14.
14. Well done.
20 here. I think you've got 20
18.
13.
Yeah, 18,
18,
13.
13.
hard work, this is.
£23. 10. In third place, again a regular, last year's champion, Mick Large. Second place, Dad, Phil Jones. I'll show you how to use it. And the new Fjuka champion for this year, first time he's fished it, so brilliant performance from him, considering the weather was really hard as well, is Tom Caswell.
Well done, Tom.
Thank you very much, you money. Oh, well, that's yours.
Tom, it gives me great pleasure to present you with the Fjuka Baits Green Farm Champion Trophy this year, 2021. Well
Brilliant.
done, mate. Absolutely awesome. Right, let me ask you how you've done it. I mean, I've watched you today on the method feeder. What made you settle on that as a plan?
I had every intention of using the pole. I set up a sort of a medium line, a short line and a margin. I thought that's how I'm going to do it, on the short line probably mostly. Nothing happening on the pole. Saw a couple of the other guys on the lake catching on the feeder, and I thought, well, I'll give it a go. And it literally just didn't stop going around all day. I mean, I must have dropped 20 or 30 fish probably off the feeder, but you know, it's one of those days. But it was the ones that sort of came in the net that counted. So yeah, no, I was really happy with that.
Absolutely. What I'm even more happy about was when I spoke to you about your story. I mean, this is only your fifth match ever.
Match, yeah.
You've only been fishing about a year, and it was your daughter who made you get into it.
Yeah, my daughter's really keen on fishing. She's only 7, and she gave me the excuse to be able to come with her as well, because it's much easier to justify to my wife that I'm taking the daughter along as well. And so yeah, we've done lots of days down here actually on the lakes here, and yeah, she loves it, and it's really given me a chance to start fishing.
So you've never fished before. Your daughter wanted to get into it. You got the bug yourself.
Yeah. As a kid, I did a bit of sea fishing. I grew up in Plymouth, so I was lucky enough to do some sea fishing there, but nothing serious. Never more than the odd occasional sort of jaunt down to the pier sort of thing. But yeah, no, really got into it.
So
here.
this is your first ever match win, and what a way to do it.
Absolutely.
Well done, mate, and
Thank you very
hopefully
much.
we'll see you to defend your title next year.
I'll definitely be here.
Brilliant.
Why not defend it?